Good morning, Daithí. We're on to blog 3 already. You're very welcome and to the Handshake. And again, I like to think that we are wakening up minds and getting people thinking what is the future, because unless we get involved, we will end up with something we do not recognize and say what happened there. So in this episode of the Handshake, we discuss the impact of AI and Singularity on global education and by extension on the global workplace, I argue. And how might I best describe global education and place it in the realm of the handshake, i.e. connectivity, collaboration, and human contact on every level of existence? Would you like to have a stab at that, Daithí?
Well, first of all, Teresa, thank you, and great to be back with you again on the handshake. A criminal law of it. Now, if you look behind me today, you will see that I've chosen a different background. This is the background of the project in Europe called Synapses Academy. And if one is into the area of biology, then one will know that the brain is this whole connectivity of different synapses. So if we look behind, it just looks to some people like, oh, why, some sort of alien. But we are a collective, and everything in us is a collective. So global education and AI singularity, in many ways, in the simplest term, can say that globalization is what, if we look back at the beginning of computing, when everyone said that all computers are only going to speak one language at that time, which they said was English, and all communication was going to be English. And the whole future of computers when they came out would be that in order to use a computer, as long as you knew how to use a QWERTY keyboard in English, then you were fine. In other words, the globalization of education. Maybe putting it simply in another way, people looked at the idea of one size fits all. And others like Orwell in 1984 put that down as Big Brother watching you, controlling you. So there is one train of thought that says that globalization is ensuring that all forms of education, including edtech education from primary up to third level, including in business, etc., is all fitting into one little tunnel, flushing it through so that there's a sense of Big Brother watching over it, and everything is towards that idea of singularity, where that idea of human cognition, its capability, and AI will work together to ensure that we're all good little boys and girls and them, LGBTQIA plus and everything in the world, and we're all globally singing praise the Lord and pass the ammunition, that kind of idea. But there's another train of thought.
Well, connectivity in global education, I suppose the context of the handshake connectivity isn't just about access, but about creating genuine understanding and empathy on a global scale. But that's a big one. Collaboration in global education. It emphasizes that learning is a shared journey, benefiting from the exchange of diverse viewpoints. And then think of human contact in the age of AI. AI can facilitate learning, but it is the warmth, empathy, and support from teachers and peers that shape the global citizen, the worker of the future. So by framing global education within the handshake, I argue that while AI and Singularity will continue to redefine educational tools and methods, and by extension, tools and methods within the workplace, the underlying human connection remains irreplaceable and central to meaningful, impactful learning on a global scale. So was it Malcolm X said, education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. And I think that is the wake-up call that we must emphasize in today's banter. Okay, so describe the elephant in the room this week, Daithí.
I suppose the elephant in the room this particular week, and by the way, thank you for that, because that was the flip side of what I just gave.
Sure.
Which, what I believe myself, is what AI singularity is. The elephant in the room this particular week is what I pushed out there as a possible, probable definition of global education, which is that if one again is into Star Trek, global education and the globalization of education could be looked as the Borg. And if you don't know Star Trek, Google the Borg, because their famous sentence was, resistance is futile. In other words, you're all just going to be assimilated and you're all going to become part of this technological connectivity within a central idea of AI singularity, and we're all just going to become clones, and we're going to do it. The elephant in the room is that is a real possibility, because even in blog 5 I'm writing at the moment, the capacity to think that maybe in the future parents could be connected synaptically, look behind me, to children to be able to gauge their well-being, their emotions, and can regulate that through thought process, through AI singularity connectivity in the biopharma and beyond the biotech industry, to ensure that the children's capacity to personalize their own learning in a personalized intelligent tutoring environment, or inside in business, whereby you could have workers, whereby you could have an AI ensuring the capacity of maximizing of work, could be a possibility in the future. And the elephant in the room is we're so busy, as is the case in every blog, eating the sweets in the sweet shop, enjoying the sugar. We're not looking at the diabetes of whether it's edtech, industry, third level, or society. The capacity of AI singularity could indeed be way beyond Big Brother in the sense of surpassing human cognition capability.
I put it to you that that sense of futility already is entered worldwide, and I think it was very evident during our lockdown periods of COVID, and everybody seemed to have lost their tongues. There is a sense of it's unraveling out of our control. But global education, to give you the formal definition, is an approach to learning that prepares individuals to understand, engage with, and contribute to an interconnected world. It encompasses the development of knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes that enable people to appreciate cultural diversity, understand global challenges, and work collaboratively across borders to address complex issues such as social justice, environmental sustainability, and human rights, and put that in the context of the mixed up, mad world we're in now, and you say that is high pie in the sky. So global education really emphasizes global awareness, global thinking, critical thinking, empathy and respect, and active citizenship. All of these are very noble ideals. I really, really question about the possibility of ever achieving it, considering the imbalance in the world that we're all aware of. And there is another flip of the elephant in the room nobody wants to talk about. So education, was it John Dewey? He said education is not preparation for life. Education is life itself, the very essence of life itself. So we're aware of the benefits of globalization, or as those who are supporters of the idea, such as increased access to information, cultural exchange, and collaborative problem solving. What are the drawbacks of globalization and global education in your perspective? The drawbacks of globalization, number one.
Yeah, the drawbacks are very simple. Look at the world we're living in. We're in a world at the moment that is full of inequity and inequality. The reality is, from one continent to another, the word education cannot even be put in the same weighing scales. The fact is, there are parts of the world right now, and we know this, where you have people in certain countries where women cannot even hear the sound of another woman's voice because it is against their law. How can we possibly talk about even the futuristic drawbacks in education when there exists right now an abject inequity of opportunity, not inequality, inequity of access to education? But to answer your question, in order to get to a globalization, and by the way, thank you for putting out the definitions that are in the blog. I'm the one taking your role today, jumping on the other side. But to me, the reality is this. We have a long way to go in this existing society in 2024, with particularly the Gen Z, Gen A, and all of us that would have been the baby booms and the others, to even reach a stage where, dare I say it, humanity is even a word that one could even discuss. But in the real world of AI singularity and globalization of education, it would be the perfect Garden of Eden, the utopia whereby every human being can connect in an equal, equitable way to be part of that, look behind me, the synapses of what I will call that sense of utopia. But the drawbacks are simple. He who pays the piper calls the tune.
Calls the tune, yeah,
And I've said it before, and you have agreed. We are blaming the machines. We're blaming the AI. But we are the humans who are coding the algorithms. Therefore, don't shoot the messenger. The problem here all the time, it's like psychological deflection. That whole theory, oh, it was them, or the child inside in the creche. It wasn't me, it was them, or the person inside in the job, which is, I'm not going to work well because I'm not being paid enough. And all of these are there. The problem here is not the AI and the singularity, the globalization. The problem here is, sadly, humanity has a bloody streak in it where it's always looking to get one-upmanship, where the piper is calling the tune, and where there are people who want to make money makes the world go around, and that is greed.
Yes, absolutely. But we are to blame, but it's a certain proportion of the we who want to lead the pack. And that's where it gets scary. So the drawbacks of globalization, really, to I suppose, bring together what you're saying, is cultural homogenization, economic disparities, environmental impact, and the loss of local identity, which is huge. And we see it on a large scale happening already. But the drawbacks of global education, then, very much Western-centric methods being imposed.
Well, again, it's like the person on the rugby team. Like, when it boils down to it, the person who can kick, basically who can do the kicking, just like even in American football, the quarterback, or should I say, they very often boil down to be the person, as we saw recently in a game with Ireland and the All Blacks, the person who will win a game. So very often it does come down to that. But I would say, Teresa, everything I'm saying and you're saying, we know that in AI singularity, that because it is a hypothetical theory right now, but at the same time, I could say to people, it is happening. It's the elephant in the room.
Absolutely.
We can do both. But from an education point of view, if we believe that we're first world and we somehow have, through our regurgitative assessment models, whether it's baccalaureate, leaving certificate, GCSEs, etc., that we have the best way of doing it, of course we're going to impose that on emerging societies and continents. And if globalization means that, and it means an equity of opportunity, then okay. But again, Educo is to lead forward. I believe that from whether it's in business or whether it's in society, that the elephant in the room is the hashtag AI singularity debate, because we're not looking at the diabetes of the sweet shop. So
I think people are afraid to look at the implications of this. So they really need to sit up and get involved. You've got the standardization challenges. You've got the digital divide that you were referring to there. The focus on global issues over local concerns, and the potential for ideological bias is huge.
Well, again, if there's bias in an AI and algorithm, it's because that it was not in one. The big thing, even with the EU AI Act, or even if you look at the idea of what UNESCO, OECD, and again, I keep saying to people, go out there and educate yourself, inform yourself, look to the sites where these are coming on. Even yesterday, I read a major blog of someone saying, all these EU AI acts and all these other acts, they're all biased and they're all trying to control us. But the fact is that everyone at the moment is scattering because they're all afraid of what might possibly happen. So they're all bringing out this myriad of acts to attempt to protect themselves. The bottom line is you can put on as many flak jackets as you like, but someone is going to design a bullet that will pierce them. And that bullet is AI singularity. So again, I'm going to correct you, but I would like to think of one thing. I actually believe that AI singularity could actually enhance the concept of local enculturalization, that languages that are dead can indeed be recorded to be brought back into the life, brought back into reality, because it can allow someone to understand their own essence being encultured within their locality, to also be part of this bigger globalization of what that is. So I may be the small cog in the wheel, but if the tire comes off, it's easy to change the tire. But it's a tiny little screw behind the wheel that you can't see. If
Yeah.
that comes off, the wheel comes off. We all play a part.
But everything you're saying is presupposing a certain level of knowledge and intelligence on behalf of the ordinary person on the ground.
And
on those-
consciousness.
absolutely, you know. But as you know, I like to put things in the organizational psychological context. So analyzing from an organizational psychological perspective, the role of the workplace leader and the educator in the AI Singularity global classroom or workplace of the future. So you're looking at change management, navigating that shift, modeling resilience, facilitating a growth mindset, and managing stress and uncertainty. So the only certainty in today's world is uncertainty. You're looking at emotional intelligence in the AI classroom and in the AI workplace. AI is critical in workplaces as it facilitates effective communication, collaboration, and decision-making. So understanding and regulating emotions, empathizing with students, and creating a safe space for exploration. Then you're looking at leadership and mentorship in the AI world, cultivating a shared vision, providing guidance and direction, inspiring ethical behavior. And that whole question of ethics in AI is huge. Collaboration and teamwork in the AI enhanced classroom and workplace, fostering collaborative thinking, supporting collaborative teaching and training, and promoting global collaboration. Then you're looking at professional development and that notion of lifelong learning. Learning should never stop. It's right across the lifespan, right across the work span. Modeling lifelong learning, encouraging learning organization, bringing that organization to life and getting organizations on a par with what's happening out there, that they're not working in their own silos with their blinkers on. Focusing on self-efficacy. Then you've got autonomy in agency in learning and teaching and in training. And I was big on this in our blog number 1, and that whole thing of the possibility of the loss of autonomy. So as an organizational psychologist, I believe autonomy is one of the key drivers of motivation and job satisfaction in the AI enhanced classroom or workplace. Educators or leaders or workers in the workplace can offer greater autonomy to students or to workers by incorporating personalized learning pathways. So you're enhancing student engagement, encouraging self-directed learning, and balancing autonomy with support. And then you've got the workplace culture and well-being, which is huge. You're creating a healthy school culture. You're creating a healthy workplace culture, because remember, everybody in the education system is going to move on into the workplace, and that's where the problems or the clash may happen. Managing teacher well-being and managing workers' well-being and promoting psychological safety, which is a much hackneyed phrase in the organizational world these days. So now I'm just moving on with that background. I'm going to move on to analysis of your blog. You quote Harari, 2018. As we approach the theoretical point of technological singularity, when machine intelligence may surpass human cognitive capabilities, the implication for education becomes critically significant. Now, that's dating back 7 years, 2018 paper. What would you say to the challenge that we've long gone past theoretical singularity and that the implications for education are critically significant, but have eluded most educators, and the implications for the workplace are critical because they are eluding many CEOs of companies?
Well, first of all, I want to say that in 2018, the important word there was theoretical. And I would agree with you. The theory of 2018 is a reality right now in so many areas. I don't think I would agree with you that it's eluding so many CEOs, so many educators, because in my humble opinion, it's not that it's eluding them, but there are none so blind as those who do not wish to see. If you have a system that works, we say, if you have a bicycle that will get you to and from point A to point B every day, and all you've got to do is pump up the wheels, and it's a good bike, and there's nothing wrong with it. You don't have to go to an electric bike, or you don't have to go to a bike that's worked on solar. So in many cases, the reality is that we come back. Remember the old idea of the successful management. Go back to the 90s. The Japanese had a philosophy which was called stick to your knitting. In other words, if
Yes.
you want to be a successful company, you stick to your knitting. So you were talking about change management. I mean, it said like, I love everything that's about change as long as it's not change. But the
Yeah.
big word that's missing here and is this: educators, and we'll come back to them, CEOs, IVET, those who are differently abled. The one word that came in to the whole essence or reality of how, for example, the OECD looked upon this, and the whole idea of how PISA looked upon this, was they introduced the word creativity. Even the good thing of people say, on the good ship lollipop, we talk about STEM. STEM became STEAM. For the first time, we realized that human beings, if given the right engagement, enablement, empowerment, what you call agency and beyond autonomy, actually, the greatest gift that a human being has when he, she, or they are engaged, enabled, or empowered in an autonomous environment where they have the self-esteem, the self-confidence, the control to know that in a well-being environment I'm here, is they are supremely creative. And that creativity is what EdTech, IVET, those who are differently abled in the past who would have been considered to be no way in the workforce can do it. So here's what I'm thinking. It's not that it has bypassed many, but the bicycle is still working perfectly. And therefore, change is the dirty word in the equation. But to bring people beyond that change is to now bring into an autonomous environment where singularity indeed shows us, enables us to bring our creativity. The one thing that singularity and AI does not have at the moment, it has logical binary capacity to create, I use the word to create possibilities. We have the myriad of multitude of synapses and synaptic connections to be beautifully human, meaningfully soulful, mindfully creative in a changing environment. But it doesn't make money for a lot of people, and therefore stay on the bike.
You bypass it, yeah. But it's a sort of symbiotic nature between the AI and the human, but the human organic creativity cannot be endangered in any way by AI, but maybe enhanced.
Yes. Yeah? And as long as the human being knows that we have, I mean, for example, in blog 5, again, even on way out there, blog 5, the first thing I'm bringing out when I'm talking about the whole idea of how do we look at this idea of come on, I took it, but it could be a CEO. The whole idea, there are 10 main reasons I would posit again from this out there that AI can never, ever replace, surpass, surmount, or anything humanity and human beings. I'm going to keep coming back to this because if we give away our power, then we give away everything. But within that power is the capacity. Now, let's be clear, Teresa. Even if you're a master and you're even in that idea, Netflix, the gambit, we know for a fact that going back as far as blue in chess, you're going to be beaten by something that can think logically and binarily. But when you start throwing curveballs and you start bringing in the humanity of creativity, and if you can synergize that synaptically with AI and Singularity, we can create that globalization of education to create an equity of opportunity that takes children from places on continents where they can't even write in something beyond a piece of slate to now using multimodal connectivity. And I know there's another side to basically become part of 21st century society. We have that capacity, but we as humans have to go there.
We have to waken up to it, but we need also frameworks to control. We need frameworks to work within. So Singularity, I believe, has already begun.
Yes.
The pace of technological change is outstripping many educators' understandings and preparation for it, and likewise in the workplace. The AI role in shaping education, that whole thing of the technology and the tools is going to become central in education. Personalized learning experience, adaptive learning platforms, etc., etc. So you're looking at also the datification of education. We love this data, this whole thing of having the data on things these days. And we're looking at the erosion maybe of human-centered learning unless people get in there and upskill and know how to optimize the use of AI in
Well,
the
it's one of the,
education
it's
process.
one of the 10 reasons why, in many ways, AI will never replace humans, because automation is something that is part of humanity. AI can create certain things, but if you think about it, AI, I'm going to put it very, very simply. AI, you need electricity to turn on the machines, even if that's solar power.
I know.
Humans can turn off the power. It's like in Star Trek, when they wanted to turn off Data, they just plugged him and he went to sleep. So the fact again is the power of being able to turn it on and turn it off. But pushing again an idea of globalization in the workplace, whether it's IVET, I mean, even in Ireland, we give up vocational education training in the sense of what we call VEC, and now we've created these sense of colleges. And indeed, the Taoiseach, our own Prime Minister in Ireland, created that sense of, with now his new minister, Patrick O'Donovan, these ideas, these new pathways so that one can access higher levels of education and training. But in all these parts of education and training, we have to understand that this is happening at such an exponentially, I can say, I put it simply, fast pace, that we just need to ensure that we are upskilling our own capacity to be able to think, to be critical thinkers in a creative way. And that to me is what's missing very often in most training programs. Most training programs use the data because they are easy to interpret, instead of bringing it into an environment where people are allowed to be critically creative and creatively critical, to work as a community of practice so that they can create the future of now. And the problem with that is you cannot assess that. So I would now argue, what is leadership?
I know. In your blog, you then talk about AI technologies have the potential to democratize education, but present challenges in implementation, particularly in regions with limited resources. So what does democratization in education ideally look like, and how would AI, singularity, and global education look like in this realm?
I've coined a term which I've seen out there before called humanocracy. The humanocracy, like the human AIology, technology, humanocracy. What it would look like, in my opinion, would be this. If you look at a lot of countries where there are coups d'etat, where you have dictators, very often these are countries where education is not only not compulsory, but education is something that is shunned. It is not given to the people. It is actually kept from them. They think that the whole idea, if you keep them barefoot and ignorant, you know that whole idea, it's there. So, in my opinion, if people could access not fake news and all of this rubbish, but could actually access the real sense globally through connectivity with AI singularity to something that is real and true and is meaningful out there, they would educate themselves, because they may not be able to read and write in some of these, but they can hear a lot of people, they can listen to, and AI can put them into their own languages and give them a sense of, well, I know it's the other side of what I said, that Big Brother watching you, but let's imagine we live in the perfect world, which is the Garden of Eden before someone introduced the damn apple. The reality is that could allow a giving a flow of information which would educate and lead forward people globally, irrespective of where they come from, to be able to make decisions that, based on what real education was meant to do, move forward in a meaningful, mindful, soulful way. Yeah,
but you're thinking in terms of education and liberation. You're thinking in the ideal world, and I suppose AI's role in democratizing education ideally would be the personalized learning, the scalable education, the language and accessibility, the resource allocation, etc. But we live in a very unequal world.
We do, but come on, you quoted Malcolm X. If Malcolm X didn't say it, if Nelson Mandela didn't stand up and say it, and some people are picking on Greta Thunberg and saying that young girl should go back. The fact is, anyone who puts their head above the parapet, anyone who puts them up, there's going to be someone who's going to take a sniper. But the fact is, sometimes you see, even we spoke about this in a different blog, prophets very often would not be accepted or acknowledged in their own time or in their own environment. And I hear what you're saying, the ideal society. But if we as humans give away our capacity to dream. And
Oh,
like the
yes,
song
indeed.
goes, and when you think of John Lennon, I'm a dreamer, but then again, I'm not the only one. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
come on. I hope someday that you'll
Mm.
join us and
Well,
the world will be
one.
one. But that is, to some people, a load of rubbish. It's a dream. But come on, if John Lennon didn't sing the song, if Malcolm X, if the great theorists who believe in the humanity, the Dalai Lama, the people out there, the Gandhis who stood up and said, hold on a moment, humanity is beautiful and precious. But what we're saying is we can actually work with AI singularity to engage, enable, empower, enhance our own humanity, our own creativity to this equity of opportunity, globalization. And people will say, oh, Murchú is off his head. What is he on this morning? And I would simply say, I am okay. Maybe this is about being the dreamer, but
We
I'm
need
not
vision.
the only one.
We need vision. We need hope, and our young need hope.
Yes.
Without hope, we're going nowhere. So the challenges to implementation really is access to technology, ethical and equity issues, teacher training, huge, cultural differences, and ethical concerns about AI and autonomy. So, what is the role of global education in addressing marginalization?
Marginalization, again, is caused very often by those who seek to disempower.
Sure.
And marginalization is caused by those who seek to, I suppose, impress, and I'll use that verb in its widest sense, upon the masses. As we see the guillotine, or go back to the French Revolution and the Bastille and any other thing that happens. The role, in my opinion, is that these people cannot control the accessibility of the likes of AI singularity, the connectivity of what globalization can provide to people in the darkest parts of anywhere on this earth, to access what you would hope in the utopia to be the way forward, the means, the frameworks, the scaffolds, the opportunities. You cannot keep people barefoot and keep them stupid and ignorant and impress upon them if they have accessibility. And so therefore, imagine that you mentioned COVID. During COVID, in certain parts of Ireland, a certain company put satellites up in the sky to certain rural parts of communities in Ireland to give them accessibility to the global stage when even our own broadband wasn't powerful enough. We now know that there are things beyond Starlink up there that can do this. But again, the question I would ask is, the problem is not AI. The problem is the human being who's controlling that AI.
Human frailties.
But in the real world, globalization, singularity is actually the garden of Eden, from beyond connectivity to human consciousness and capability, to the idea of differently abled, meaning enabled, and everyone in a way being able to communicate in a safe environment that is ethically, and that would be in the third level. And I know I'm being hypothetical and going, I know I'm being theoretical here, but we have to acknowledge that this is also an elephant in the room that can be our ally.
So what is digital colonialism? And do you not think it has already happened due to our collective inability to keep a pace with AI singularity and the power of wealthy nations to design AI for their own purposes?
Of course, you cannot walk in certain cities around the world right now for less than a half a second without being recorded. I mean, the idea of, you go back sadly to the Boston Marathon, the bombing that time, and the idea that the technology that was used to face, I suppose, recognition, which, by the way, was designed by an Irishman, even though some might otherwise say so. And indeed, there was a lovely series brought out on that, should we say, by a young person. It was based on a real story, but take it back. The fact is that governments and powers that will always use the tools, the sweets and the sweet shop, to control. And the fact is this is the elephant in the room, the diabetes. And what you've just mentioned there is the diabetes, which is now being used by many governments around the world to control through digitization. In other words, whether it's giving out information, whether it's fake news, whether it's putting an information of even Hitler Youth at that time had this sense of brainwashing. So I'd go as far as saying that the negative side of AI singularity in a digitized world is one where you have the capacity to brainwash people into believing that an apple is an orange and an orange is a banana because that's what is out there. And you know as well as I do, Teresa, if you tell a lie long enough, it becomes a truth.
Accepted to the norm. But therein lies the whole conundrum. Global education. You wonder about it. You know, would it ever happen? You look at the key aspects of the digital colonialism then. Colonialism. Control over data, the technological dependence, cultural erasure and standardization, monopolization of knowledge and technology, economic exploitation. That's where the whole thing, that's the block. That's the block that will come in the way of your vision, that lofty vision.
Yes, but we can flip the coin because we are the messengers, we are the programmers, we are the one. You see, this comes back to this whole idea of man's, and I use man's in humankind's inhumanity to humankind.
Yes, of course.
We keep shooting the messenger. The whole idea, if one is in the whole idea of reading the Bible, even as a historical book, take the log out of your own eye before you look at the speck in others. We keep blaming everything. It wasn't me. It's like, and that's why I say coming into business. Going into business is like going into the creche in primary school again, because you have to learn how to play, except play this time is business. If the child says it was his fault, it's her fault, it's my fault, the child can't go, well, actually, sorry, I'm 4 years of age. If I look at this logically, I was part of the problem, but I am part of the solution. As we get older, one would think that we have reached the age of reason, the age of consciousness, the age of the capacity to be able to make decisions. But sadly, my mother used to say, some people die, never grow up.
Yes, but you've got the whole issue of values and value systems and conscience in there. And what are you willing to trade for worldly success? That's the big question. So I would say that digital colonialism already has happened. You've got technological dominance by the wealthy nations. You've got data exploitation. Data is the new oil. In poor regions, data sovereignty is often not adequately protected, and data being used as a commodity. You have unequal access to technology. You've got the cultural homogenization, and you've got exploitation of labor. You've got the lack of regulation and accountability. So basically, I don't know, has the horse bolted? People need to wake up, or definitely it will go out of their reach. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I'll say this much. Even if the horse hasn't bolted, the horse is kicking the hell out of the door.
Yeah.
And those who have horses know. But I would agree the following. The horse, no one opens the door of the horse stable here. The horse actually leapt over this because the horse was a unicorn. Because once AI came in, it was the creation of something that people didn't realize. Again, back to the sweet in the sweet shop. No one bothered to look at the diabetes. And colonialization is without a doubt. But now we're talking about in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Well, do you know what? If Columbus was there today, basically speaking, all he'd have to do is kind of go, Mark calling Orson, come in Orson. We go back or basically snap into some of the satellites up there. And we see, sadly at the moment, Lisa, that in certain wars that are all over the world right now, huge amount of weaponry is being guided by within a millimeter of anything you could imagine by AI systems. And that is what you're talking about. And to think that someone could take out the middle of a dime or the middle of a 5-cent piece right now with a particular weapon that could be 4 or 5 miles above the earth. That, but again, did the AI create that? The AI made it possible because it basically was algorithmically coded to be able to do this, but humans are guiding it. So please, AI will not replace humanity. Humans who know how to use AI will. But now I'm going to ask you the question which you should be asking me. So should we be afraid of humanity and not AI? And my answer is yes.
Yeah, well, you know, how can we hope to leverage regulatory bodies, policy initiatives, and increase public and stakeholder accountability when these very corporations and NGOs, etc., exert an inordinate influence on governments worldwide?
We need to choose the right people to rule, to have power. And that's the problem. People are very often fooled by what people say instead of by what they are, who they are, what they represent. And I would say there are many, many, many organizations out there who are beautifully soulful, basically killing themselves every day to do the right thing for humanity. But we very often as humans, when it comes to us electing powers, we elect because of the electricity of the human being, the whole presence of the human being, the whole wow.
Yeah, well, you have the whole social media thing entering it now as well. I mean, people are elected never canvass.
Well, and it's something that is going to, and maybe you know what, from a green perspective of the SDGs in 2030, it's about time we took down in Ireland all of these damn posters that cause so much, apart from the print of everything. And by the way, I'm acknowledging that AI has a massive carbon footprint too, just in case anyone seems to think that I'm out here saying it. The whole capacity is, if you put, and again, I quote my mother, so don't shoot me, listeners, if you put the lunatics, and I'm using that voice, in charge of the asylum,
what do you get?
And even, but then again, the funny side of that is the A team. Well, it's all, but the reality is that if you put the monkeys in charge of the zoo, then maybe you'll end up with an animal farm situation. But that again comes back to humanity. By us as humans, maybe asking ourselves, quo vadis, where are we going? I have this big thing I very often talk about when I give a keynote. I put up this huge cliff. And all of a sudden, it's like the roadrunner goes, biddy, 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 coming up and kind of comes this huge big block and goes, what's up, Doc? Like, where am I going to go? The road ends with this huge cliff. But on the other side of that cliff, there has to be something. So our idea is the capacity, the creativity, the consciousness to be able to look beyond the obstacles and to maybe bring humanity and what we really are more to the center. But we have to make that decision, because you mentioned this. Yeah. Democracy, humanocracy. The human is the one who makes the decision. And when we blame governments, and we do, in the most part, we blame governments, but we're the ones who in a democracy voted that government in. But we love to blame everyone else, like in the preschool.
I think democracy, to use the word democracy, even in today's world, democracy is something totally different to what we would like it to be. Anyway, you look at the like of UNESCO 2021, their report underscores the importance of preserving cultural integrity within AI educational tools. Is this actually possible, given the galloping pace of migration, multiculturalism, and the breaking down of culture and traditions and living standards, even of the recipient nations?
Well, it's culture. And then I would say to you, an enculturation. I've often used this word enculturation. For example, a colleague of mine, Professor Anna Dillon, recently, she does a huge amount of work in language. And the whole concept to me is that a language is not just a language. A language is a cultural manifestation of something that we are because we come from it. But if language stays stagnant, as in the case of Latin and many others, it dies. You've got the Fishman's idea of the different levels of which language and what I call linguistic genocide. So what I'm basically thinking here is, I would have to say, and I would argue, what is culture? But if we look at culture as, well, we're Irish, and being Irish, we do this because we're Irish, then the fact is you are ignoring the fact that we now have literally over 1 million people on our island in Ireland right now who have come to be Irish, to become Irish. And what has that done? That's brought in groups like the far right, it's brought in crazy groups into this, because people don't like to have themselves rattled. So culture, to me, has to be a fluid, living entity, an encultured mindset to acknowledge, protect the ethical professionalism of who we are and where we come from, but knowing that that is not the Bible. We have to change, otherwise we die. There's something that is definite in this. AI singularity is real. It's happening. It's the elephant in the room. But the one thing that is constant through all of time is change. And culture is part of change. But some people, Teresa, will try to say that culture is what we were for 1,000 million years, and we are now at the point where you can't change it. And that's the bloody problem. Culture of AI singularity is probably, if you said AI singularity is a culture, which it is, then by God, it's the most exponentially a Speedy Gonzales changing that you would ever imagine, because what was last week now has introduced, by the way, probably another 1 million sweets into the sweet shop.
So AI's cultural neutrality, is it a myth?
At present, I would have to say, because humanity, I'm going to get shot here, has too much control over the algorithm, yes. Now I'm going to shoot myself. But when AI singularity does happen, and we reach a parity and AI starts to rewrite itself in AI, then we're going to have fun. Because if AI can rewrite AI, then it can rewrite the wrongs that it, in a binary sense of right and wrong, 1 and 0, can see what humanity has done wrong, and it will rewrite itself. Now you have a different setup. But right now, I would have to say to your question, yes?
Yes, right. Now, so we note UNESCO's 2023 framework on digital infrastructure readiness. How does this translate for a nation like Ireland in the global education context, when in fact investment by the Department of Education is suboptimal and schools, colleges are dependent on the goodwill of the tech corporations and constant fundraising to ensure infrastructure provision, maintenance and upgrade? So where does that leave us?
First of all, I agree with what you're saying in UNESCO. And of course, UNESCO recently, again, if you look it up, brought out the teacher framework for teacher and student competences, which is 2 incredible documents. And the OECD have brought a huge amount as well. And they're worth reading, really looking at them. And indeed, part of my blog that's going to be coming on recently, I'm going to bring in that idea of where these competences fit in and the future of training, even into business. But I would have to say, where does it leave us? There was one minister at the time, a long time ago, and this is non-party. One minister who was minister at that time, who happened to be Micheál Martin, got funding from government to invest in digitization in Irish schools. And then education centres like Dublin West, and one of 21 in the country, took on something called digital schools. And the digital schools was a way of celebrating and of acknowledging the work the schools had, because they were given the funding to put in the necessary hardware. And then we put into the education centres what were called digital coordinators. There were ICT coordinators who then were people who were withdrawn to actually be experts to facilitate the CPD for schools. So what you had was government centre funding, hardware, continuous professional development, this constant flow of information, of training going. And then all of a sudden, some ministers decided, no more money, so no more investment. And then all of a sudden, we had in Dublin West, again, the idea of digital schools of Europe, recognised by the Commission to recognise under the competences. And people like, at that time, building on the work of maybe Robbie O'Leary and building on the work of Peter Coakley and ourselves, we built this huge framework of competences based upon everything that was out there. And we actually were there to work with schools, but we found they had no money. Actually, the hardware they had was so old. And now we have the biggest tech companies in Ireland coming globally. And sadly, Teresa, we are back still with the bicycle with wooden wheels that are actually, forget about being circular. There's many schools who are not able to get the, please, sir, may I have some more idea of getting technology because it's funding, are actually now working with students who have, but you might argue saying with students now have the phones with the capacity. Yeah. Well, the latest minister now is locking all the bloody phones away in schools because they're not allowed to use them. So, summation. Irish government right now, like many governments around the world, consider that other priorities are there. In our case in Ireland, we have frameworks that are there. Indeed, digital schools of Europe was put forward to the Irish government at the cost minimally to recognise and to guide schools to be there in every school in Ireland for a fraction of nothing that they spend in other places to do it. And the minister did not sanction Digital Schools of Europe. And that is still on her desk, or whoever desk that will be, since 2020, which was a pathway, a framework, an acknowledged global framework based upon everything to be culturally encultured Ireland, to bring them to the future of education and edtech and industry. And it was sidelined because no one could see the vision of the importance of that celebration of what is happening. So schools are doing an incredible job.
There's a total disconnect between the investment in the digital infrastructure and investment in student outcomes.
I think there's an ignorance there. I think you'll be nice and saying, and I can get shot in this, lock me away. There's an ignorance of the capacity of something like the Digital Schools of Europe to actually, look behind me, synaptically connect schools with beyond industry through creativity and consciousness, through a framework that allows schools to say, we're hitting all of these competences, like in the UNESCO, we're able to say, yes, we are a Digital School of Europe. We have achieved this. And our teachers, our parents, our students, our companies feel that Ireland is now at a place where we are building upon what is vital to our economy. But what we're doing right now is, you call it a disconnect, I call it, there are none so blind as those who just refuse to see. And sadly, those who refuse to see, it's on a minister's desk for the last 4 years. Digital Schools of Europe framework run out of Dublin West, which was highly successful in 26 counties in Ireland, and no one did anything.
So there's a disconnect between governance, business, and education. And maybe business education are always with the hand out to try and get fundraising going and to try to get support. And unless you have somebody who is very, very proactive and very into it and pursuing it, the schools are getting nowhere. And as for harmonization across all the schools, it won't happen unless it comes from the top down. Am I right?
Yes, and from the bottom up. And if you have a framework like Digital Schools of Europe and you have the confidence, then you know where schools are. You give them, you engage, enable, empower. That autonomy you spoke about, that consciousness within the EU AI Act, within the framework of what should and shouldn't. I mean, I saw someone even saying there weren't enough layers of restriction. My God, when I heard enough, what they were talking about was there weren't enough layers of restriction. Why talk about restriction when there should be enough layers to bring autonomous creativity of consciousness to empower? But it does boil down to this. Sadly, since the beginning of time, education happens to be Oliver. Please, sir, may I have some more?
What a pity, because without a solid education system, it affects right through the economy.
And then many businesses then, Teresa, will say to you, oh, when they come out of college, they don't know what we do or how we do it. So we start to retrain them again. So we as a country have spent 4 years paying for people to get a degree. And many industries are saying that they're coming out just like putting them back into the creche again. Then surely in this case, third level education really should look at what it is, not just an industry look at, but the creativity of the human being. Come back to that, to promote creativity, consciousness, critical thinking in everything they're doing in any degree. So the human being in that trait that he, she, or they have is something that will allow them to fit into, to mold, to surpass, to the whole idea of Michelangelo. Do I see within and cut away? Or do I see, should I say, outside and cut in? The whole idea of the skills that make us beautifully human. But I come back to the point we made. You can't assess that in a final 3-hour exam after 4 years, where very often you regurgitate. And now people say, oh, we use constant assessment the whole way through. But that's not the case at all levels of education.
It's education being life itself. We'll come back to that quote. So I'm going to throw this one at you, Daithí. If I were to classify any nation's education system as an instrument of government, How then would I classify a global education system? And would the latter not simply serve to multiply the problems integral to an education system in the grip of governance, working to its own ends in moulding nations to their ends?
Again, we go back to Orwell 1984. Imagine that humans are perfect and the whole world elects one government to run the whole world, which I think initially, believe it or not, could have been the vision of the EEC, European Economic Community, going back to the Benelux countries, the idea that one central government could actually be part of all the other countries to help them to all see the same thing. And what we've realized is that, coming back to the word in the first part of this blog, which was culture and then culturation, that was the big thing that never worked. In the perfect world, take every country in the world, take the best, most creative, most beautiful, most soulful, most conscious person, put them all into a central government somewhere in the world, put them up on Mars, they're on the moon, and from up there they'll go boom, 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 and everyone will basically be in this globalization of equity of opportunity. The world will be great. We're all back in the Garden of Eden, and everything is perfect. And sadly, it's not going to happen because humans are inherently flawed.
So is it it's a smoke screen in many ways?
It's what I call the importance of debate, because if we start to just be like sheep, then we become lemmings over the edge of the cliff. We have to start. The whole idea of these blogs and Singularity, Teresa, is I know nothing. I know that. But the one thing I would love to think is this. We need to look at the elephant in the room and debate this. And the elephant in the room with AI is not AI. AI and all the applications and tools are sweets, as is the case in AI for EDU. The fact is, what will it happen if we eat too many sweets? And the fact is, by the way, there's nothing wrong if we eat no sweets. But the fact is, you're in a world there where you kind of go, whoa, where am I living? Off the grid? Where's off the grid? Yeah. But the perfect society is never going to exist. Therefore, we have to debate this to get the best solution that will give humanity that sense of autonomous power, connectivity, empathy, that sense of knowing what is right and wrong. But the problem is humanity, not AI. But could we achieve it? Yes, if we start to debate and we put the right people into power that understand that we are very precious as a species, very special.
To get that globally is an impossibility.
Yeah, we're like, sometimes I often maintain, I'm sadly sometimes think we're like snakes eating our own tail and we don't realize that we're eating ourselves. And we kind of go, that's a lovely meal, yum, 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 yum. And we're destroying ourselves. Well, look around the world, everyone, just open up the news, which I don't do right now. But there is a better way, and that better way has to come from us. Don't blame anyone else.
So there is a growing body of support for transhumanism and bridging the gap between AI and human cognition. Does that threaten the human species like never before?
There are companies out there right now who are creating perfect robotics. So I would say to any mother, any father, any person out there with a brother, sister, or that, if there was a war in the moment, would you prefer robots to fight the war and finish it? Or would you prefer your sons, your uncles, your nephews, your nieces, your mothers, your daughters to go out and fight that battle? And I guarantee you, Teresa, if I put 1 million people in front of me, there's probably no one would say they want their human friends to go out. So is there a real possibility of all of those futuristic films about iRobot and the robots taking over and Will Smith and all of these, is that a real possibility? Can I actually say to you it's actually real now? Even look at Disney. Disney had brought the most beautiful robot in the States. Look at YouTube, where the robots and flying all over the place. There are companies right now all over the world that are developing the perfect robotic connection so that it can be controlled by humanity to do this. So, Teresa, that horse has definitely left the stable.
And I know the
transhumanism,
implantations in the brain, etc., for maybe Parkinson's patients,
yes,
but as a norm, implantations to augment the human. Where would that take us?
Well, here's where it would put. Let me take a futuristic look on this. The role of parents in AI Singularity, by the way, which is going to be blog 5. Parents now have implants within their children whereby they can sense their well-being or lack of same. They can regulate how the child is feeling and their moods. It can help them through regulation of we call it the transhumanist connectivity in AI singularity, to be able to do things and to feel safe and to be able to study better and create personalized, intelligent tutoring environments. That capacity of being able to connect with another person through the idea of implanting, through a sense of, recently we saw frequency. I mean, I said to someone, what's frequency? Drop a stone into a river, drop a stone into a lake. What's the ripples? So if you see, because you can't see the ripples anymore, doesn't mean they're not there. So
but they're very dangerous, many dangers to what you're speaking about, though.
Of course there are. Of course, there are many dangers. If you're going to take away the power of person, we're back to Orwell. Sure, you might as well put them on speed or put them on drugs or put them in, God knows, Teresa, I'm going to get shot here. The old days when children with ADHD in school were given Ritalin and then they gave them Concerta to knock them out and they'd be inside in school because the children basically were considered to be way too active. And the fact is their whole synaptic, put it this way, instead of it being transhumanist connectivity through AI singularity and chips, it's now always being done through biopharma. Just take biopharma and now call it chipping. So the human being, i.e. or the robot or anything. So is that a possibility in the age of AI singularity where we're going to reach human cognition capability, where we're going to reach that fulcrum? Is it a possibility? Answer, yes. And is it dangerous? It could be highly dangerous, or indeed, if it saved lives, if it was able to regulate, it could be highly, highly effective. Again, yin and yang, the debate, because
it's all in the whole thing.
It's already there. Tris, you see how people with Parkinson's, and then all of a sudden they turn on the chip, and what happens? People who could not walk, who are now in frames, whereby they've connected their spines through the chip, transmitting information from one to another, and they're walking. My God, we talk about miracles happen. These are modern miracles created by the capacity of what we call chipping or AI chipping or coding. So there's beautiful good there as well.
Well, absolutely. So you've cited a load of case studies in your blog, and take one for instance, Brazil's multilingual AI platform, the Sabre. Has the Sabre been replicated elsewhere in the world, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, it has been trialed in many places. And indeed, in that blog I gave, I think it was a minimum of 7 or 9 different cases, including cases that have failed, because I believe there has to be a flip side. In that case of language, again, I come back to the likes of Professor Anna Dillon and what's been done in the UAE and in many other areas where there are tribal languages, where there is a sense of linguistic genocide. Has it been trialed? I've looked for many other examples. So my simple answer is not at the same level in Brazil, where there are many indigenous community tribal languages, which is a huge passion of mine, by the way, because to me, Gaeilge, or the Irish language, indeed was a tribal language. And indeed, it is now gaining traction more than ever. We're not going to go down that road because there are many thoughts. But has it and is it being trialed elsewhere? My gut feeling is it's like anything else. There's always someone in the asylum out there trying something. But I have not seen anything to show me that it is being done in the same way, in the same focused way, in the same encultured way elsewhere. But that was highly successful.
Yeah, it's a 28% improvement in the test scores. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, in point 7 of your blog, you talk about enhanced policy framework. While the enhanced policy framework has noble aspirations, does it not run the risk of not being enacted as staged, as infrastructure development, teacher training, and policy guidelines for equitable AI deployment? We're very much dependent on individual nations to pursue in order to become a global player in the context of global education.
Yeah, but the problem is that frameworks need to be scaffolded. You don't build a house. You don't bring a house along and slap it up on the ground and kind of go, whoa, there it is. The fact is the foundation has to be right. So what I see happening right now in AI around the world, and I think everyone who is into it sees this, every single week, I would challenge anyone not to find at least 5, 6, 7, or 10 new policies coming out from various governments or government groups. Indeed, even in Ireland recently, we have now formed a new group to actually oversee how the EU AI Act in Ireland is now working in all various aspects of media and society. So every country is now bringing out all these policies, this framework. So here's the answer. the one shoe doesn't fit all. But the framework of the foundation has to be a foundation, which is, what is it that can enhance the humanity of what we're trying to do here, who we are as humans? And whether it's teacher education, whether it's ed tech, whether it's third level or whether it's preschool, to ensure that we're working within the vibe or the flow of what humans are and what we can do, but encouraging again that critical thinking, that creativity, that empathy, that consciousness, that by any other name, soul, which gives us at all times the edge as human beings. But the minute we just throw policy out for the sake of policy, because Jimmy did it, Mary did it, Mikey did it, he did it, she did it, they did it, then what we're doing is we are entering an area of danger. Because once you define something in law, then it's in law. And the problem is that not all laws are right. I mean, look at the poor guys 40 years later, and a few girls and a few people out there that are being seen that, well, actually crimes they committed, they actually didn't commit, because now all of a sudden we can find new ways forensically of proving it. So laws are fallible, and people are fallible. We have to be careful here.
Now, your blog seeks to address educational inequality. How in reality can this be achieved or even policed so that it can be achieved?
Again, in the perfect world, it can be achieved, because if you've got the perfect AI singularity and all policy is basically done from a central area, then it can check to see that we're hitting the frameworks, hitting the points, we're hitting the actual competences that are out there. Indeed, as again, coming back to UNESCO, a framework for teacher competence and student competence is a good framework from which to work, and others are coming out with it too. It would be able, like in the digital schools of Europe that I've mentioned beforehand, if you've got human beings out there working again to celebrate the journeys of education with others, then you have a way of seeing it. But on a global sense, do I actually believe that where we are right now as humans in what we're doing with such inequity, forget about inequality out there, do I believe that even it's a reality of a possibility of a reality right now? Absolutely not. But if AI reaches equilibrium with us in singularity, is there a way that we can actually do this in the perfect world? Yes. But is it a pipe dream right now? I'd probably be well dead, and it probably still won't be there. And why? Because humans inherently, I leave the rest to your imagination.
I know. So given the pace of advancement in AI today, are we late in hoping to achieve any, let's say, that globalization of education?
I think we need to look at our own, look at thyself in the mirror. Always to thine own self be true, and it shall pass neither day nor night. Thou canst not be false to any man. Look at what Shakespeare. We need to go back to look at ourselves and what we're doing to do it right. And if we do that, then sometimes all you can control, and I'm using that in the nicest way of control, is the sense of what we're doing. We cannot. I don't believe there is any power that exists on this earth right now at this moment, including AI singularity, that could in any way guarantee a globalization of education, because we are all inherently different, and long live that difference. But that difference does not allow us to fall into the area of being inhuman or inhumane to others.
I suppose the policy and regulation gaps is huge. Like the UNESCO and OECD AI frameworks provide some guidance, and they're very often presented as recommendations, but without a coordinated global approach, countries risk falling behind on implementing fair, ethical AI applications in education. You reference in point 10, Open Science and Chun 2021, ethical dimensions of global knowledge sharing in AI-enhanced education environments. What would such a framework, which respects data sovereignty and cultural identity, look like in your opinion?
Where we're at right now, because we're back to the word culture again, it wouldn't, can't. Because let's face it, to one human being, a carrot is a source of life by eating it. To the carnivore, a carrot is a waste of time, because it doesn't give them the power to build the protein. The difference between Homo sapiens and Neanderthal, the fact is, but what would it look like in the perfect world again, if we realize that human beings learn everything through play, that we are pack animals, and then deep down that there's good in us, then the perfect thing would be that we would have a system of education that actually honors who we are as a species and begins from there and works from that premise, instead of working from the premise, which is people cheat, people rob, people steal, so we're going to catch them out. And that's something. So in the perfect world, there is a possibility, but the idea of what AI Singularity will do is it will provide information, and I'm not saying right and wrong. It will provide information. Now, all information is not real and it's not true and it can be fake. But it will provide information in any language, in any dialect, anywhere to be accessible at any time by anywhere on this planet and beyond. And from that point of view, if that was correct, then that was, and we knew that this was right, but again, it's the human that's writing the code, then you would at least have an equity of accessibility. But that's only a point in a myriad of rungs on the ladder to even get to what real education under AI Singularity ought to look like in an equity of opportunity.
Well, there needs to be a will within and between nations to develop frameworks.
Sure, you can't even, nations don't even get it. Listen, nations are fighting over little pieces of land right now, for God's sake. How can we ever connect our mindsets?
So if nations cannot agree politically, how can we expect them to agree on AI frameworks that will foster equality of access, standards and opportunity in our highly competitive and globalized world?
Sadly, we need more Nelson Mandelas, more Gandhis,
visionaries,
more. I suppose we need more people to get into the back of the bus in the 1960s in certain countries. We need more of the Gretas out there. We need more of the shouters, of those who want to create revolution, of the Nelson Mandelas, of look, every country can pick their person. We need more of the people to stand up who are not afraid to be the revolutionary voice to say, stop, this is about human.
Who is the standout world leader for you at this minute?
God, it's very hard to answer because I don't listen to the news anymore. And you know why? Because I cry.
All bad news.
I cry. And the reason I cry is because I cannot understand. Actually, Teresa, I go as far as telling you, I wish to God AI Singularity did exist beyond humans right now, so that it could right so many wrongs, and that the code in the AI Singularity was so beautifully pure that it could stop these weapons of mass destruction and bring humanity to a place where it would have to do it. So I'm proposing an idea where AI Singularity shuts down every automation in this world to get us to sit back where we were born, gummy, bald, and ass naked. So we could sit down as equals and discuss what it is that makes us special. But I cry when I look around. There are many great people in the world right now, but sadly, I have to say, my problem is that
they're not getting voice, are they?
It's a very, very, very sad world right now.
All at the hands of man and greed. So
hands of humankind, not just man. There's man, woman, child, and everyone out there right now who sadly think that they can do what they want, when they want, how they want.
So the practical strategies then to foster cooperation in a way that balances these realities with a commitment to equitable AI. I suppose developing a baseline of ethical standards through neutral, trusted bodies. And where you get neutral, trusted bodies, localized adaptation within a global structure, incentivizing compliance and cooperative standards. And how do you do that? Open source models, public AI research collaboratives, civil society as a mediator, and advocate for standards. So given the reported quantitative outcomes, how can one expect to quantify global advancement at the hands of AI when it is not possible to standardize or put one size fits all on individual sovereign nations of the world? Is this actually a collision of sovereignty with globalism?
It is, but who dares to dream We as humans have always dared to dream. One small step for, one giant leap for. The fact is, we come back to the point you just made. Someone and some people, in our case, we're trying to get this AI singularity debate going. Someone really, in the essence of power, needs to stand up and say, stop. Let's just
Take a rain check.
stop. And I think that it will only come, as has happened in all cycles of humanity, when some major, we'll call it in the nicest way, some major event, science by, you mentioned COVID, and that came in many ways. I would have to say that around the world right now, most people don't even want to use the word because they want to forget it even happened. But it did kick a reset in a lot of people's minds and practices, which are still alive today. But the powers that would be in many countries are doing everything to reverse those changes because it doesn't suit their economic model or their third level education model or their business model or anything. People want to go back to the same old wheel.
It certainly catapulted technology on 30 years, didn't it?
I think at this particular stage, we would look at it from a digital school of Europe perspective. Schools that were at the highest level of celebration at 5. After COVID, they would have been at number 1 and 2 because of what technology had been utilized in how it had shown itself to bring about change. So what was a 5 now became 1, and then the next 5 is wow. And I think in education, I would have to acknowledge this, as opposed to what Michael O'Leary said recently in Ireland, even though I would hear what he said as the CEO of Ryanair. Teachers stood up consciously and creatively, and they were like white sharks, which he said they're not. They went into the change environment, the vast majority, and delivered to students something that was transformatively innovative, which, Mr. O'Leary, is what a CEO does. Duh.
Yeah. But that went unnoted. I think the fact that everybody is sat in a classroom implies that everybody's an expert in education, and you know, they said that relationship between society, parent, and education and educators is changed forever. I said, give it 1 month and it will revert back to where it was, and I think I was right. You know, so you've got, I suppose, quantifying global advancement driven by AI amid diverse sovereign nations. It highlights the tensions between national sovereignty and globalism. And how do we get over that? We've the challenge of diverse metrics of progress. We've sovereignty and data sovereignty as barriers to unified metrics. We've the collision of sovereignty and globalism that's ongoing, and we're moving forward with a hybrid approach. Might be to reconcile sovereignty with the desire for global AI advancement, a hybrid approach that respects national autonomy while fostering global cooperation. Maybe that could be pursued through global minimum standards of local flexibility, regional hubs for collaborative metrics, and shared AI metrics for global challenges. But we could go on and on. Take case study 6. You talked about the European Union Cross-Border Learning Initiative, the AI Bridge Programme 2023 to 2024. It connected students across the 27 EU nations. Now, while the success of this project, this initiative, is impressive, it has served Europe only. Or is it just an example of how harmonization of global education is an impossible dream? Or could it be used as a blueprint, a template?
As an exemplar. We call it, my colleague Peter Coakley and I have used the word before, which is we call it a lighthouse. What's the function of a lighthouse during the day?
Oh yeah, to show
nothing.
Oh, during the day, it's at night time with the light.
At night. So therefore, but a lighthouse. So I would say that all of these case studies are lighthouses, things from which we can learn, which could be harmonized and which could be sent out as an exemplar. But again, you're talking about different continents with different perspectives, or priorities. And we're coming back to the frameworks which are there again. And as we see in the continental AI acts, and there are continental AI acts out there, if people look them up. Recently, I read the African Continental AI Act. You have a situation where the priorities are different. Therefore, apples with apples, oranges with oranges are often not the case. But you could use it as a lighthouse exemplar as to how one might approach something that has led to success and an equality and equity of opportunity.
So there's so much going on. There's so many different initiatives going on. What I said in our last chat, I believe that there's a need for a coming together or a spreading of the good word, to support equitable AI deployment in education. UNESCO and OECD recommend a cross-border educational framework. Should they go further than simply recommending? As many nations don't even get as far as reading the recommendations coming from such organizations. Is it an overstatement to say that that education will not respond unless recommendations become mandatory frameworks for implementation? Or do they lose their charm when they become mandatory?
Well, all I can say to you is this. There is no planet B, and right now we're in the middle of a major, whether people want to accept it or not, and you can bring up all the theories, but the fact is, look out your window, the weather has changed. We're in the right in the middle of probably one of Earth's recalibration moments on climate change. And even COP29 can't agree on something so simple. We're all the world leaders together. So now put them into the area of AI singularity and ask them to agree. If we can't agree on something that we know is actually destroying our planet today, right now, and one only has to look at what happened in Valencia, and one has to look at around the world in the ideas of countries over in Asia, Nepal recently, and so many others. If we can't acknowledge that that's actually happening, how in God's name can we get anything, mandatory or not? And by the way, people will always fight back. That might work in the area of AI. The chances are we cannot agree right now that we're actually destroying ourselves. So how can we possibly agree on something that others might say is unimportant?
Well, you spark an idea here. I mean, is there a need for a coming together in a COP style to discuss AI and AI singularity?
People would look upon that as giving away their IP, their intellectual property, all of the algorithms they have. They don't want to share because, again, now we're the babies inside in the creche. We want to keep our toys, and we're not going to leave anyone else play with them.
Hence the inequality and the perpetuation of this inequality that's going to block progress, and which would give cause for worry going forward. Where is it all going to go?
Well, again, we're talking about those who can stand up, leaders in the world who actually believe that this is important to lead this. That's what's missing right now, the leaders to actually lead by example, the world leaders who are considered and are seen to be or perceived to be in a place of power to make this happen. But again, I'll take the example, if COP29 cannot solve something as simple as fossil fuel, because fossil fuel equals billions and trillions of dollars.
It's all about profits, and it's all about money, and it's all equating that with success and success of the nations, and that tug of war continues.
And some would say AI is the same.
Yeah. Are individual and or regional endeavours simply insufficient in the quest for AI-enhanced global education? And while the debate rages, singularity will be achieved, rendering it all too late for mankind to exert real influence over a self-willed AI when it has reached the point of singularity.
The elephant's in the room.
Yes.
Already there. So the fact is, I would say, yes, it's going to happen somehow, some way, whether we like it or not. And the fact is that once again, we're not dealing with this in a debate. We're eating the sweets and not looking at the diabetes. And that is the problem. So everything you've said right now, I would have to agree, because let's face it, if we think that by not looking at singularity, it's not going to happen, it's too late. It's too late, because the way it's going right now is it's already there in one form or another, and it's going to be there more than you would imagine. When you reach that human cognition capability and that equality and the possibility that the AI can surpass that, it will be too late at that particular point. We need to start the debate and do it now. But so lighthouses, examples, case studies need to work. And that's why I quoted them in that particular blog. They need to be seen, but you need someone to be a champion on this. And sorry, we're just pieces of dust. as organisms, you and I, that are doing our best on this, you need someone whose voice will be listened to.
Well, I am trying to be that voice of that ordinary person looking in, but I'm looking at it from the background of education and organizational psychology and the implications as I would see it. I'm trying to be that voice in asking, in igniting a debate with you. So the large players who have the money and don't mind paying the fines for underachievement on the SDGs, for instance, like climate change, etc. They simply serve to emphasize the disparity between the haves and have-nots and are above reproach. If this is so, will AI, singularity, and global education not simply serve to marginalize the underdog unless it's handled properly?
Yes. Simple answer, yes.
Yeah.
Again, give a
A
lot of people
rhetorical question, really, isn't it?
It is, but if you give a lot of people, I know I'm bringing it back to all the time, the same thing, and apologies, listeners. You give a lot of people free in the sweet shop, you can be damn sure a lot of them are going to get diabetes because they'll gorge themselves. But the fact is, who owns the shop? Who's ensuring how much sugar is in the sweet? And no one is out there looking at the other options in many ways, but it also has the possibility of doing the opposite. And that's why I say hashtag let the AI debate continue on this in singularity. But please, just Google it, look at it, see what singularity is, and realize that this is an elephant in a room. It's not a bull in a china shop. Forget the bull. The elephant is much more powerful and is already inside in that room and is going to come out and is already out there virtually. Look at the different elephants, the colors we put in each week in the blog, and see what they mean to you. But one thing they definitely mean is there is no such thing as an elephant. Each elephant is uniquely different and has its own capacity, but lighthouses we need. And this is where we're at. But Teresa, yeah, we can paint the doomsday picture and it is as possible as the utopia.
Yeah. So you talk on point 12 of your blog, enhanced ethical frameworks. I put it to you that it's not possible to achieve global ethical AI governance in education. The best we can hope for is regional frameworks which address cultural sensitivities. Do you think I'd be right in that?
I think you're right, because globally, what is the word ethics?
Yeah.
But if you do it in a regional perspective, and even do it in a continental perspective, it's even a massive challenge. So again, think of the foundation of the house. Do it within the country, within the framework, like let's say of Ireland within the EU AI Act, and then the EU having as a continent. Look at continental Africa and their policy, continental Asia and their policy. But even within continental Asia, there are different people who think they're continents. So, but I think by doing that, and that's why even within the acts right now, that which is considered to be ethics is actually different and defined differently within the frameworks of each of the continental ones. So they can't even agree on that.
Yeah. The East-West divide and all that. Your points 13 to 16 of your blog. While this may act as a barometer on progress being made across the globe, it will be benign unless acted upon. How do you actually enact frameworks? Fines for underachievement isn't a solution, like you would do with the climate change, etc. The obstacles to achieving a global strategic framework and timeline for implementation are such that this simply becomes another paper exercise of no concrete benefit to any nation, or indeed globally. So there are too many factors involved to achieve coordination within and between the factors that are involved.
There are, but the one thing that can make that happen, the various permutations and combinations, are that if you try to bring education, as in what education is meant, and you educate people as to both sides,
yes,
then you would hope that the humanity within people would see what is right and what is wrong. But to do that will not happen on a global capacity, on a global level at this moment, simply because globally we do not acknowledge the right of even humanity to exist as human beings. So how in God's name can we possibly have a framework that acknowledges how AI singularity should or should not be in there? I think we have to do it on the basis, like you said, of local, regional, national, regional, continental, and then hopefully at some stage when humanity wakes up and realizes it's too late, sort it out.
But that needs to be put into a framework now.
It needs to be Well, the frameworks need to be suggested now so they can be
Sure.
open as a debate in many
Yeah.
ways.
You also talk about emerging research priorities, and you talk about neural interface learning. What do you envisage as to the outcome of research on brain-computer interface applications and the implication from an ethical standpoint?
Again, you see, using the word ethics. The fact is, if I have a father right now who has Parkinson's, we spoke about this in the previous blog,
Yeah.
and the idea of an interface with anything that's driven by AI or technology can improve my father's life and stop him from suffering every single day, then to hell with ethics. To me, the ethical thing to do is to improve that life and make it better. I read an article recently, and yes, as early as yesterday, which said the 1,000-year-old child has already been born, because of what can be done right now with the idea of biopharma, AI singularity, and we call it microchipping. So again, yin and yang, up and down, fulcrum is there. So the fact is, there is so much good, but the possibility and probability of the other side exists. Come back to what we said in blog 1 and 2. Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, choices and options.
Would you want 1,000 years of this?
It's an interesting question, but if I answer personally right now in the world in which I'm living and which makes me cry when I listen to what's happening, you are joking, right?
So the issues of privacy and consent, neural manipulation and cognitive enhancement, autonomy and control, equity and access, neurodiversity and identity, and you have the long-term effects on mental health. All of these things have to be looked at when you talk about NILs, the neural interface learning. Now, general, just to come to bring it to some sort of an ending here. Take, for instance, the 17 SDGs. Place them in a global context and the AI singularity in global education context. Is it not impossible to achieve harmonization of interpretation and action across the globe to achieve these 17 SDGs, given the existing disparities between nations as we stand?
My answer is no, actually, I disagree with you, because if AI exists in a binary world, 1 and 0, if you ask AI how to implement, and I challenge anyone to go into an AI model, ask AI how to implement the 17 SDGs on all continents in the world right now in a short-term, medium-term, long-term plan under a SCOT analysis, strengths, challenges, opportunities, and threats. And basically speaking, it will actually give a logical, reasonable, straightforward up answer how every single country in the world can achieve these.
But are they actionable?
They are actionable, because what AI will do from everything that's out there, the new model AIs, I'm not even going to mention any particular application. New models of AIs are so up to date, they can grow together, I mean this, billions of bytes of information and summarize them in a matter of milliseconds. So they would actually look at the best existing practices and mindsets and possibilities of reality out there to say, here is a framework, short, medium, long term, under this that can be achieved in the 17 by everyone. The problem, Lisa, is that to do that, that would mean economic, societal change, mindset change, governmental U-turns. That's the problem. So once again, I say the problem is not the AI and the 17 solutions. The problem is the human beings who just don't want to, because it's not in their own interest to do it. So to wrap this one up, and I know, and we're doing it, it would be this. AI singularity and globalization is a dream. Is it a pipe dream? It is, but everything has to be a pipe dream somewhere to become a lighthouse, to become either a framework or a policy. Can we save planet A? Yes, but we have to change intrinsically, deeply, at the level of microcellular synapses behind me to do this. And to do that, we as human beings have to understand that if we cut ourselves, we all bleed. And if we're all dying, my heart can save someone, possibly everywhere else in the world, because my heart is a heart. So, as the Spanish would say, corazón, the heart is there. But the thing is, and now I'm going to get shot. Someone said to me, if you take away humans' minds, we'd have a great planet. Well,
I know, but there's a real, we're at the point where we have to awaken. We have to get the debate going, and that debate has to start, let's say, within countries, within regions, and globally. It has
And
to.
it has to start at the idea, which it is doing at the European level, but there are continents out there laughing at the European AI Act, saying that it actually is kicking Europe into such a conundrum of eating its own tail that we'll never be able to achieve anything. And others are looking upon this as options for us to succeed and go further. So we need to pull back and say, what is best for us right now, in the hope that it will become a lighthouse exemplar, and AI singularity can be an elephant in the room where the elephant's strength can empower, help us, work with us, be an ally, as opposed to being looked as someone said before in hospital, are you a friend or an enemy? And if you don't understand that in English, Google it.
But
So,
this also that they divides, they disconnect between governance, education, and the organizational world, the world of business. Those disconnects must be mended, because we need to start speaking the one language and start looking outwards together.
yes.
With that, I'll wind it up, and I look forward to our chat on blog 4.
And who knows, Teresa, maybe you're going to start pulling in other people now, people of renown. And you know what? Let's widen this out, because I think where people are concerned, they're getting bored of listening to Daithí, not Teresa. Teresa's the consummate, incredible person, but bringing others in with a different side, and that would be one. I look forward to that. But again, thank you so much, Gurv.
And I would say, Daithí, if there's anybody listening, particularly from the organizational world, from the business world, even from the third level sector, anybody listening with an interest in this area, please contact myself or Daithí through LinkedIn, and we will include you in the chat. Let's broaden the net. Okay, thank you so much.
Slán gach duine.
Slán.